Hello, Tracy. Good afternoon.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Very good. We're having a great day today. How are you today?
Good, thanks. Yeah, cool.
Very good. And which part of the country are you in today?
I'm down in the west. I'm in Galway.
And the weather, I believe, is quite nice today in Galway.
It is after a couple of weeks of having pants, wind, rain, and yeah, it was nice to get up and see a bit of blue sky today. I can tell you, yeah, it's cheered me right up.
I would say it's probably best to enjoy that while it lasts, I'd say.
Yes, so me too. So I
Yes.
did get out for a walk first thing for that very reason.
Lovely. Lovely. So your talk is Be You Bravely, Say Goodbye to Fear and Insecurity. So it sounds like a really interesting talk.
Yes, well, no pressure.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking
Okay, so
part
I'm
today.
just going to go ahead and share my screen and we shall crack on. So let's go. Slideshow. So yes, hello everybody. My name is Tracy, and whilst this is a talk about overcoming fear and insecurity, it's also about pointing to something deeper that is within every single one of us, and which in essence is the true source of where our real security comes from. So I love to work with high achieving individuals. I love to work with people who are driven and who are motivated and who really want to create something in the world. And what I've often found is that for a lot of people, the enthusiasm and the drive and the desire to succeed, there's something missing. There is a missing link in between them. And it means that for a lot of people, they're finding their success from a place of fear and insecurity, which is a really, really hard place to build a life from, because it's kind of an uphill battle all of the time. And when I started coaching first, a lot of the work that I would have done would have centered around how we overcome that, how we overcome our fears and our insecurity, and how we work through all the obstacles that are getting in the way. However, over the last year, I've come across this deeper understanding, which in actual fact points to the fact that a lot of the obstacles, they don't really exist in the first place. So what I want to share with you today is an understanding that will give you a much more solid platform to really thrive from in every area of your life. And in many ways, it's not okay to just look at one area. It's not okay for me to just look at somebody's career and look at somebody's business, because we are the sum of all of our parts as human beings. And if we are struggling in one area of our life, of course it's going to show up in every other area. So what if there was a deeper intelligence and wisdom that could help us, not just in our business and not just in our career, but in every area of our life? So a lot of the older models and a lot of the, what I would have been bringing in with my coaching as well, they centered around learning techniques and learning tools and things that were going to help us to fulfill our goals with greater ease. But the thing with when we put new things into the psyche is that they require efforting, they require work, they require learning, and old habits die hard. So often we find ourselves being drawn back into repeating the same patterns again. And I know that I worked in sales for a long time. I worked in the pharmaceutical sector. And when we used to go off the road and go in for training and learn all these new techniques and strategies, I used to be so motivated and ready to go and get out there and take on the world. And I would bring these new techniques in, but because they required learning, eventually the enthusiasm used to wear off, and I would just revert back to all the old habits that I had in the past. And that is the risk that we take when we try to learn something on the outside to change us on the inside. And a lot of our attention gets taken away from what is actually going on at a deeper level, because I have seen so many programs and different talks recently on teaching us how to be more resourceful and learning how to become resilient. And the fact is that these are all traits that are innate within every single one of us, because quite frankly, it would have been a really cruel trick of if the intelligence behind all life had created us human beings in this form and given us the power of thought and given us the ability to create these amazing things. And they sent us out into this world where, quite frankly, shit happens. And they didn't give us tools to cope with that. So we do have resilience and we are very resourceful. It's just that sometimes we forget. And when we are trying to learn new things to help us to be who we already are, it increases the amount of thinking that is going on in our mind, which in essence makes us feel overwhelmed. So what if there was something that didn't require any learning and didn't require any efforting and didn't require lots of thinking? And that is the source of our real potential. It is not on the outside, and it is not something that needs to be learned, because there is an intelligence within every single one of us which goes beyond our intellectual mind. What we learn in terms of education is limited. So our mind is very limited because we all have personal thinking going on. We all have personal beliefs and personal judgments. And they tend to shape the way that we see the world. And in that space, that's literally in the box, or what I often call the thought factory. Because in the thought factory, all of the information that we are perceiving from the outside world is getting kind of skewed and mangled with all of these beliefs and judgments that we have. And the intelligence that is the key to our resourcefulness comes from a place that is beyond all of that thought factory. It comes from a deeper place. And it is the source of all of the really cool ideas that we see being created in the world around us. So, you know, if we are to look around and see all these millions of people that have created amazing things in the world, whether it's technology and the technology to be able to do this today, whether it is beautiful pieces of music, literature, art. And, you know, when you sometimes see something like that and go, wow, where did they think of that? Every time I watch Harry Potter, I am astounded as to where did J.K. Rowling get the idea for that? And the truth is that it came from an intelligence and a form of creativity that is beyond the intellectual mind. And the only difference between people who are showing up in that way and every single one of the rest of us is that they're not allowing their personal thinking to get in the way of these things coming through them, whether it's an invention or whether it is Harry Potter. She just allowed that to come through her. And this is a source that every single one of us is connected to, and it is not limited in any way. And the only thing that stops us from connecting to it is when we start to doubt ourselves, and when we start to question our own mind, and when we start to look outside of ourselves for security. And for me, what has happened in the last year and the experience that people have gone through with COVID, which I had my COVID experience 10 years ago when, you know, my marriage fell apart. I became a single mother. I lost my job. So I was unemployed and trying to support 2 children. So for me, I'd already had that experience of having the rug pulled out from underneath me. And what I did learn in that was that I was really resourceful and I am really resilient. And I thought that it was something that I just happened to be lucky to have within me. But I realized since that I was wrong. We all have access to that. But when we look to the outside world to provide us with security, we're looking in the wrong place, because I think this year has been a perfect example of how it's not coming from there. We don't have any control in the world that's going on around us. We never had, and we never will. And when we get caught up in our personal thinking around how, well, the world is supposed to look like this, but it's not looking like this. Now, what am I going to do? And we're trying to mold and change things on the outside in order for us to feel good on the inside. And a lot of people are lost. A lot of people are lost because where they looked to for guidance and wisdom is not there anymore. But the truth is that it never was there. And when we can start to connect in with our own wisdom and to be guided from that place, that is when we become unstoppable, because that is where our deepest potential lies. So I guess, you know, to understand it on a slightly deeper level, it's, you know, what is the nature of thought? And when we talk about tools that can help us perform, the only tool that we actually have that is of any benefit to us is the tool of thought. And we were given thought, and we are the only living species on this planet that has thought, that has the ability to think. And what that gives us is a connection to that deeper intelligence. Because if we weren't able to think, we wouldn't be able to get these ideas, have this creative thinking, have these thoughts flow to us that we can then bring into the world, and we can experience them in the moment. So that is the nature of thought, and that is what it's meant to be used for. Where it all goes so terribly wrong is when we get stuck in our thinking. And when we start to believe our personal thinking, and when we start to take it as fact, and when we fail to recognize that we are living in the experience of our thinking and not in our circumstances. And what I mean by that is nothing can give us a feeling until we first have a thought. Nothing. I cannot feel stressed unless I have thinking that is stress related. I cannot feel annoyed by my coworkers unless I am having thinking, unless I'm having annoying thinking. And, you know, there was a really wonderful example of this during the week I was watching I'm a Celebrity, and one of the participants had to get into a box with snakes. We are the only living beings that have the ability to create an experience just through thought. So this guy was standing, he hadn't even got into the box, there was no snakes around him, and he was in a state of pure terror. We can create fear purely by thinking. And when clients come to me and they are stuck in insecurity and they are stuck in fear and they are stuck in panic mode, it is not because of their circumstances, because their circumstances cannot give them a feeling. The only thing that can give us a feeling is a thought. And our insecurity does not come from what is going on around us. It comes from the thinking that we are doing about what is going on around us. And in turn, it eventually starts to show up in how we are experiencing life. And more to the point, we get so caught up in these loops of habitual thinking that our mind gets more and more cluttered with thoughts that are not serving us. And in doing so, there is no space for that deeper wisdom to come through. So our thoughts are not meant to be ruminated on. We're not meant to pick at them like a scab and go over them and over them again and see, well, what's the meaning behind that? And I must find that so that I can feel better if I understand this thought. If you can understand that all of our thinking is made up in the first place, then we start to realize there is no meaning behind it, only the meanings that we give it. And that our thoughts are designed to be transient. They are meant to be like clouds. They are meant to just pass through our mind. Because when we do that, there's always more thoughts coming along, always. We can't control them, but if we allow them to just pass through, we are creating more and more space for deeper wisdom to come through. So the look of a cluttered mind versus the look of a quiet mind, and how we can connect more to that deeper intelligence. You know, it is literally, if there is no space, you know, often when we make up our minds about something and we become so strong and determined in our belief about something, you know, there is no space for fresh thought to come through. When our thinking becomes so contaminated and so full of judgment, and we believe it. I mean, we really believe things to be true. And the elections in the US, I thought, were a perfect example of how you have people with such polar opposite viewpoints, and each one fundamentally believes that they are right. But all they are doing is believing their thinking. And their thinking, they've been having it for so long, it seems very, very real. So often our thinking seems very real because it's creating an emotional response within us. And when our head is full of noise and full of thinking, it's very difficult for our deeper intelligence to come through. And it means that we are not operating at our highest level of performance. So whether it's stress, whether it's overwhelm, whether it's thoughts about insecurity, whether it's fear, whether it's panic, whether it's what am I going to do, it's just clogging up the system. So in working more from wisdom and how we connect to that space, really all we need to do is allow our mind to go quiet, you know. And if you have ever had that experience where you've been sitting at your laptop or your PC or whatever your work format is, trying to find an answer to a solution, and you're going around and around and around and around in your head, and you got nothing. There's nothing showing up for you, blank screen. And then maybe you go for a walk, or you load the dishwasher, because we're all working from home now, so we're all great at, you know, staying on top of our domestic chores. Or you're lying in bed at night and you're just about to fall asleep, and boom, all of these ideas start to flow into your head. I have written books just as I'm about to fall asleep. I have created amazing blogs just as I'm about to fall asleep. And it's not because our mind is getting busy. It's because our mind has had the opportunity to get quiet. And once we get quiet, that deeper intelligence, it sees a space and goes, oh, great, we've just found a little gap in the thinking. So we're going to send you all these fantastic ideas. It's not luck, it's not a fluke. And I think that's what a lot of people, where their insecurity comes from, is the idea that we need to find all of the solutions in our intellectual mind, which, as I've said, is limited. So often people try to preempt scenarios. Oh, what if this happens? Right, I better find a solution to that just in case it happens, out of fear that I'm not going to know what to do when the time comes. But here is the beauty of deeper wisdom. So on one hand, it is not going to give you answers to problems that don't exist, because why would it? That's a waste of time and energy. It is beautifully responsive in the moment. And it will always show up when we need it. And the trust and belief that we need to give ourselves confidence to step up and to really be present in our life, it comes from knowing that there is something deeper within us that has got our back. And it means that we can free up our mind of all of those loops of habitual thinking, because we know I don't need to figure it out. I know that I will know what to do in the moment because I'm connected to this source of pure, limitless potential. It has always been there for me and it is always showing up. And I guess one of the things that stops us from connecting with that wisdom is we put so many restrictions on how we expect life to look for us. We have the restriction of time. We have the restriction of, being specific in what it is that we want. And here's the thing, sometimes our that deeper wisdom, it knows better than we do. And when we're very linear in our thinking, and when we are very focused on just one thing, it often means that we are missing different opportunities and things that are going on around us, which may not have been what we thought, which means that life may not be as we expected it. But that doesn't mean that the experience isn't going to be amazing. And what I have seen with the people who I work with and the people who are working from this place is that they are creating amazing experiences for themselves. It's not that they're not putting in the effort. It's not that they are not showing up. It's that they're showing up from some place that is completely different. They're showing up from some place that is guiding them, and it is allowing life to live through them. And I think sometimes as humans, we think that we're separate from life, but we're not, because if we were, we'd be dead. The intelligence behind all life is the force that gives us this existence here. And we are still connected to that. And if we can think of something that's intelligent enough to create planets and, come up with ideas like gravity and stuff, then I think it's probably intelligent enough to guide us through our life as well. All we have to do is get out of the way by stop getting caught up in our personal thinking and these habitual loops, and allow that wisdom to come through. That's where our security comes from. That's where our stability comes from. That's where our confidence comes from. And that's all that we ever need. We don't need to learn anything different or have any extra tools in our reserve to help us with that. It's already there. It's just sometimes our mind gets so busy that we don't see it anymore. There are my contact details. I have a podcast called Be You Bravely, where I explore a little bit more around this understanding. And if anybody wants to reach out and have a chat, that's cool too.